in place, and that's really part of the collaboration between the teachers is, what do I want my kids to learn? How am I going to get them there? And what do I do to support the ones that don't get it the first time? You know, when you think about testing, not just in math, I mean, it's really arbitrary. I think by next Friday you should know this.
Not
everybody's going to know it by next Friday. And so there are different philosophies and approaches to addressing that, you know. So maybe the test is given next Friday, and if you don't get the score you want, I mean, there are some retest, redo, there's different names for it. There are different things to consider. You know, our school is residential, so that does put a different element because the kids have each other 24/5 at least. Most of them go home on the weekends. But that does give a different part of the day where they can work together. But I know there's the after-school tutoring sessions here. And so, you know, I'm sure they will continue to look at other ways to support the kids outside of the math classroom. And there was something else you touched on. Oh, yeah. All right. So I sense that you're viewing that as a negative. And I want to ask you why. And I'm not sure, because, you know, that world that our kids live in, with the cell phone in the hand and the internet available to them a lot, if not always, you know, that is a resource I would want my kids to use. And I joked about it, but we're a one-to-one environment, and many of my kids have Wolfram Alpha open in class. You know, and Wolfram Alpha, for those of you who don't know, it's a knowledge engine is what they dub themselves, and you can give it any math problem. You don't even have to have math symbols, and it will solve it for you. And it used to be free, but now I think if you actually want the whole solution, all the steps, I think you have to pay for it. Is that right, guys? You have to pay for it now?
Well, like, I usually go on the website if I need to do my math homework.
And Khan Academy is another resource, and we send our kids there too, because, you know, really, in that world of information that we have available, I mean, I wonder what this is. You sit down and you look it up, whereas before it's like, well, I'll go to the World Book, right? I remember those days, a whole shelf of them. The last thing they really need me to be is a source of information, because they have information way more than I'll ever know available to them. Now, they may go there and it still might not make sense, or they might not be sure how to connect what they see on Khan Academy or YouTube to the problem in front of them. But that's the conversation then that we have.
Well, no, I think it's good. I just think that if the whole goal is to get away from the teacher and the whiteboard and the explanation in the traditional sense, then that's okay. But if that child still has to go to, you know, other resources to understand the same thing that should be learned in a conceptual or collaborative environment in class, then it's kind of defeating the purpose if they're still going to the website for a traditional whiteboard, you know, teacher explanation process, if the whole program is designed not to be like that.
Well, probably so if they're doing that all the time for every day, for everything. And I think the other piece then is what happens after they go to Khan Academy or wherever they go. You know, are they able to connect that with, because some of the problems that are in our program are they have a little bend in the road. I always tell the kids, you know, they come from programs where if they got 15 or 20 homework problems assigned, they could do 10 of them, and if they could do 10, they quit because they knew they could do the other 10. And I always tell them, you know, like, don't skip. Don't skip our problems because you're going to miss an opportunity to learn something. And it never fails, you know, Dr. Krause, I don't get how to do this, and I come over and I go, well, let me say you did this other problem, and I'll flip back 2 sheets because I know the curriculum so well. Lo and behold, it's blank. Oh, no wonder you can't do that problem. So we have a conversation about this problem back here from 2 days ago that you didn't finish. Oh, yeah, now I see how I can do that. So, you know, helping them learn for themselves how to make those connections, because a lot of it is back to a mindset. It's not just about getting the right answer. And so much of what we see presented, whether it's from a teacher or Khan Academy, is you do this and then you do that and you're back to your list of rules that didn't make sense in the first place. So if there's, you know, that's a nice, I think, a great supplement, because that piece is important. You can't be successful in math and not know the algorithms. But if that's all you focus on, then you leave frustrated.
I'll say something positive about it. I personally like it because I see the students working together. So like in the after-school tutoring sessions, I'll ask my son, and my son is not good at math. My younger son, I mean, he would say I'm not good at math, right? And he doesn't like it. But at least he likes it better than he used to, and I see them working with each other to, you know, I'll say, well, how did it go? And he'll say, oh, it went really well because, you know, Alston and I did this together. We worked on this, and I like that. I like that team approach, and I think that I'm personally a supporter of Common Core because kids need to learn how to work together and solve problems. So I like the math series. I think that's good. And my other son really loves Mr. Harris because he said I can ask him as many questions as I want, and it's more open-ended rather than, you know, like you're saying, just learn the formula, do it like this, you know.
Yeah, and I think the students, once they realize that that is the environment that you're promoting, are much more likely to ask a question, because otherwise you feel like you're interrupting somebody to do it, right? And that's awkward for any of us, much less interrupting an adult.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's the whole basis of the school, is to be able to ask questions, and that's how gifted kids are. You know, they need to be able to do that.
The other thing that I have found to be true with our environment, which I think is similar here, is that it feels like a more casual atmosphere in the classroom, even though the content is pretty intense.
Right.
But the relationships that I can build with my students because of that are so much richer than they are when I'm up here and you're out there, that they are, again, more likely to talk to me about what they're struggling with and what they're not. And I think the trust factor goes higher. And if they know that I really believe that they can do this, they're going to feel more compelled to keep trying.
Right. Absolutely. I think both of my kids felt that way. Make two different. Mrs. Chiffon was great too. So I'm personally very happy with the math program. So I like it.
Other thoughts, concerns, cheers?
My children come from a Montessori background, and this seems just
Kind of
in line with that. They didn't say anything to me that...
shocking, right?
Right. It's like, oh, well, that's how they did grammar
I was
school.
just talking to, at dinner, we have two physics teachers who have gone to proficiency-based in our sophomore program, and she came from a Montessori background, one of the teachers. Yeah. So it's very much in line with...
I agree. And that's why we came here as opposed to others, because the school was as close to that experience as we could get and not be Montessori. That's kind of just right in line with that.
One of the things that struck me when I first went to IMSA to learn about this, to see if we thought, and there was a team of us, to see if we thought it would work with our inquiry approach, because that's what we do in all of our classes. Sitting in a classroom when the student says, well, I don't get this part, I don't know how to do this formula to get to this, and the teacher says, do you see that whole row back there of math books? Go back and find one who will show you how to do that, and then come back to me and we can solve the problem once you know that. And I thought that really stuck with me, and the kid did it with no problem. He went back, he looked, and it was just kind of the same thing as a Khan Academy approach, that it was like, find the basic, then come back to me and we'll work it together.
I often have students come to my office with their problem sets, and they'll have worked all the ones they think they know how, and then they've got this big white box in the middle of the page. And my first question for them is, what have you tried? Because you can tell if it's like clean white box versus a few erasures and scribbles, maybe even a tear, right, or scratch paper or something. And so now they don't come to me until they've tried something. And usually it's something that's going to help. But my job then is, well, how can I help them see how to break this down into a simpler problem that they could solve, and then work back up to the problem that they have. So the idea of help has come up when I took this up the road, and the parents were frustrated, and maybe this is sounding familiar. I don't know how to help my child. There's no book. I can't look up, or I don't feel like I can help them with these problems, and they're frustrated, I'm frustrated. And so I will leave you with the challenge of thinking about how do you define help my child in math. Because if your mindset shifts from I have to help them get the right answer to I have to help them persevere and be a good problem solver, you're sitting down and modeling that process and helping them figure out what to do on that problem is probably a lot more help in the long run than just helping them get an answer.
I have a question. Let's go beyond high school, because you've been teaching this method in that school for so long. What's your feedback from the students that went through that system?
College is so easy.
I mean, they
That's
come
what I hear.
back and talk to you about it. You know,
And I'll tell you what's really cool are the kids who struggled at our school that I was talking about earlier. They leave there, and we talk about the IMSA bubble, and they will come back and say, oh my gosh, I'm tutoring everybody in math. I learned so much here, I can't believe it. And they were the ones who struggled because there were kids that were faster or smarter or in higher classes than they were, probably because they started ahead of them to begin with, and they couldn't believe how much they really got until they were in a different environment, and now their college friends who were in a traditional program are struggling so much and they're not. So I think it's a success story either way, whether they're coming in super high with us or they're coming in and struggling because the biggest win is they have this belief that I can do something with this problem, and they'll sit down and do something and just go at it.
To add on to that, I experienced IMSA when I went to college. I graduated from the academic magnet, then I went to Rutgers. When I had decent grades at academic magnet, but it was very direct teaching. When I went to Rutgers, we actually had problem sets. They didn't call it that, but problem sets. I was lost. We did this before, but the professors and some of the other peers, they had an intuitive feeling for math. There was a situation where we had to make the number positive. How do I do that? The grad assistant, he wasn't very nice, but he said, you just square it. Like it was obvious, and it never clicked. I've squared numbers since middle school, but I've never had to use it to solve a unique problem. And eventually I got myself together, but and Rutgers is a pretty decent university, and that's where a lot of my professors would use pejorative terms for the tradition. They call it cookbook mathematics. I learned the steps, but I never really applied it. So. And I tell my kids that I don't want them being like me when they go to college. Right?
Well, thank you.